Hi, I'm Dearborn City Councilwoman Leslie Herrick, and I welcome you to this edition of Meet Your Council. Today we're joined by the city's attorney, Debra Walling. Thanks for joining us, Debbie.
Leslie, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So the reason that we have Ms. Walling here today is that we're going to talk about the most important legal document that the city has, and that's our city charter. Some people liken that to being our Constitution, like the U.S. Constitution. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely agree with that. That's the way most people describe us. A city charter is the local government's constitution. It provides the framework, the powers, the duties of all the elected, appointed officials, the framework for our government, basically.
And so this document that we have in front of us, this thick, dusty book, is the original city charter to the city of Dearborn. So tell us a little bit about what we find in this charter, and then we'll talk about the current charter that we'll be looking at later this year as residents.
Well, the original Dearborn City Charter is quite fascinating. It's dated 1929, but the front, if you can see the thickness of it, it's because about a third of it are minutes from the original Charter Commission meeting that formulated the very first charter for the city of Dearborn. And I should note another important aspect of having a city charter is that it's required by state law. Any incorporated city has to have a city charter. So when Dearborn and Towardson and Spring Wells were all being formed, they had to write a city charter, and this is the document they came up with. So the people that actually were working on putting that initial document together was our first charter commission. That's correct.
So they were elected by their three different sections of the city to represent them?
Actually, as I read the minutes of what transpired, it looked like there was a vote of those three communities to consolidate, and then a consolidated vote on who should be on the Charter Commission.
When we talk about the Charter Commission, that's something that Dearborn voters are going to be voting on this year on August 3rd, is whether or not we want to open up and review our current charter, and if the voters agree that that's something we want to do, they'll then be voting in a new Charter Commission to take a look at and make recommendations regarding our charter.
That's true. And the reason it's on the ballot is because our charter requires it to be on the ballot. This dates back to the 1979 charter, which said every 12 years ask the voters whether they want a charter revision. So when I first started working here, the first time the voters were asked in 1993, they said no. The next time was 2005, and they said yes. And so that's the most recent charter revision we had. Those charter commissioners were elected in 2005, came up with a new charter that the voters approved in 2007.
So prior to that, how often did the public examine the charter and make changes to it? And what was the process to make changes prior to that?
Well, you don't have to wait 12 years. You don't have to make a wholesale revision of your charter. The charter can be amended at any time. It's a very formal process. It requires either the city council to put the question, a charter amendment, on the ballot, or initiative by the voters or registered voters, a certain percentage, to put an amendment on the ballot, or a revision. You don't have to wait the 12 years, but we have to ask the voters every 12 years, according to our charter provisions. Very important, only the voters can change the charter. Only the voters can amend the charter.
So on August 3rd, the voters will decide whether or not we want to establish a charter commission to look at the charter and meet for a period of time and then come back with recommendations to the voters.
It's interesting. Most of the charter commission's role and the whole process is set forth in state law, in the Home Rule Cities Act. So that says that prior to the 9 people getting elected, the city council shall decide what they're going to be paid, each commissioner per meeting, and where they're going to meet. And then state law requires them to meet the second Tuesday after the election. Must be their first meeting.
That's interesting because with the mayor and the city council, they don't take office until January following the election. Whereas in this case, the charter commissions pretty much immediately start meeting. And some cities, that is how the mayor and their councils, they do take over their positions right away, but not in our city charter.
Right.
But for this role, they do.
Well, just from my own personal experience, I think it is important to get going on this process, having been through it in 2005, 2006, and then ultimately the approval happened in 2007. It's a lot of work. I mean, it literally requires the commission to go through every single word, sentence, paragraph in the existing charter, see what changes they collectively want to make. So I think that charter commission met 72 times.
Over how long a period of time?
They got done in 2 years. State law gives the charter commission 3 years within which to accomplish a new charter or not. If in 3 years they haven't come up with a new charter that the voters have approved, then the commission's disbanded and their work is done. Now they get three opportunities to put charters before the voters during that 3-year period.
So they work together, and there's probably a lot of discussion to come to compromise as to what's going to be brought forth to the city. And then what happens with their recommendations?
Well, they don't need the approval of the city council or the mayor or anybody. Once they've got a finished product that they all voted on, they're a separate elected body, and they're not under anybody's supervision. So, once they think they've got a charter that they want to put before the voters, then they give it to the city clerk, and it'll be on the ballot. So,
and then it's just voted upon in its entirety.
In its entirety.
By the voters.
Correct. Up or down.
Right. Well, thank you so much for discussing the city charter, a little bit of its evolution over the years here, and this important decision that Dearborn voters have before them on August 3rd as to whether or not to open the whole city charter up for examination by an elected body that they will elect in November if the voters so choose to do so. And how this important document sets how we do business in the city. It's our bones, it's our infrastructure. And this is the public's opportunity to take a really close, deep dive into what the document is and maybe what it should be going forward, because it's nearly 100 years old and we've made changes over time, but it's part of our democratic process. And I certainly appreciate that and the opportunity for people to weigh in and make this decision. And I appreciate your institutional knowledge and the guidance that you've given in the past, and for sharing with us today what this means, that we have an election where people can vote on this on August 3rd. So thank you, Debbie Walling, for joining us, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Meet Your Council. We'll see you next time. This is Dearborn City Councilwoman Leslie Herrick. See you then.